Indian revolutionary Lim Nee Soon played a key role in developing the rural villages of Nee Soon district. Hi, I'm Suzanne Ho. Welcome to Timeline Singapore. To pay tribute to Mr. Lim's contributions, an area was named after him, and behind me stands his statue. But the rural villages of Nee Soon have all but disappeared. Now renamed Yishun New Town, the area looks much like any other housing estate in Singapore. Yet how much of the old Nee Soon has been retained? The ubiquitous shopping mall located next to the MRT line. The ceaseless streams of the morning traffic. The nondescript flats in the midst. Sunday crowds at a marketplace, hustling and bustling for the week's buys. A typical housing estate that has kept little signs of its past. More than a century ago, the old Nee Soon was an agricultural area, specializing in gambia, pineapple and rubber plantations. Livestock rearing was also another important form of livelihood for the villagers. In the early 1900s, a Mr. Lim Nee Soon was enjoying robust business in the pineapple and rubber trade. At one point, he owned more than 4,000 hectares of land. To encourage his workers to live in the area, he provided interest-free loans for them to build homes on his land.
Every week we would go and visit the farm to collect rent, because it was all rented out to these farmers who had chickens and ducks and pigs. But they were so poor that they couldn't even afford to pay for their rent. And I remember very well when they would offer eggs, chickens and ducks in lieu of money.
But Lim Nee Soon went beyond being a landlord. He also took care of the needs of the villagers and so attained a high social status in the community. When the pineapple and rubber prices fell, his career went downhill, but nevertheless he continued his community work. His son, Lim Chong Pang, also joined him in his social endeavors. Today, 67 years after Lim Nee Soon's death, 3 generations of his family, led by Lucy Chen, have come to this part of Yishun New Town. For in this park resides the statue of Lim Nee Soon.
Of course, we are very proud of his achievements. We are so glad that he has done so much for the country. And now we try as far as possible to convey that to our children and grandchildren so that they will know something about their great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather.
As Lucy did not live with her grandfather, coupled with the fact that she was very young then, she honestly admitted that she did not remember much of him, much less knew about his contributions.
In those days, the children or grandchildren hardly, I think, spoke to the elders. We don't really talk about what he does or what he's been doing. To tell you frankly, I learned about it in the museum when I went to see a film. You know, they had a story about him.
If Lucy has a faint recollection of her grandfather, the connection is more remote, or perhaps even non-existent for those who've never known the man.
I just knew that he had a street named after him. He was like Pineapple King. And I just recently found out that he founded Chinese High. When I see the statue, like, Nothing much. It's just a statue of somebody that I'm related to. So it's not much feeling.
That's quite natural because he is almost as good as a stranger because you really don't know him, you know. You only know a person when you associate yourself with that person.
Indeed, sentimentality exists only for those who've had real-life experiences, for memories are made of these. Otherwise, a statue remains just a statue. Although much of Lim Nee Soon's contributions no longer exist physically, this Chinese church near Jalan Ulu Seletar at Sembawang Road is a standing testament of his generosity, having existed since 1909.
但是那时候的教会是建在这个当时的这个港角，到了这个1924年吧，1924年，那个时候他为了发展他的那个塑胶厂，就是通益塑胶厂。那因为刚好我们的教堂就在那个塑胶厂的前面，所以他就建议说，不如他找另外一块地，然后也帮我们盖好一间教堂。其实就是这块地，所以其实我们这块地跟这个教堂，是当时林义顺先生送给我们的那块地和为我们建的这个礼拜堂。
Born in 1962, Michael grew up on the church premises as both his grandfather and father were pastors of the church. The church was renovated in 1967, and up to the late 1980s, the church conducted its service in Hokkien to cater to the dialect-speaking community. However, it has since switched to providing Mandarin service.
那我想，我选择在这个教会，其实很直接的，就是你也知道，就是说我从小就在这里长大。那当然，对这个教会有一份的情。第二方面是有一群，这里现在还是我们的，可能是已经是教会的领袖跟弟兄姐妹，也跟我一起成长。我们对这个教会，对这一区的工作，都有一个理想，有一个梦。 或者说我们所说的一个意向，那我们都希望说我们能够一起去建设，也对这个社区有一些的贡献。
During the 1970s, the Pua village was perhaps the most famous of all villages in the vicinity. As the name implies, the majority of the villages were Puas. The village was well known because of its refined social structure, communal spirit, and leadership qualities.
那个时候，我就是常常都听到，好像我们教堂前面以前有个油站的老板也姓潘，杂货店的老板也姓潘，那么旁边的商店的人也姓潘，所以我小时候的印象是，到处都是好像是跟我有很密切的关系的人，那么他们对待我的父母，对待我们就好像亲人这样。
While the villages have been replaced by developments around the area, the church remains steadfastly steady. But it too has to evolve, from expanding the premises to accommodate an increasing number of churchgoers to the inevitable launch of its service in English.
如果因为这个改变而失去了它原有的特色，那就很可惜，因为它当中有它的我们教会的一个特有的一个文化，跟我们过去的一些的传统，所以我们在构思这个教会的模式的时候，我们就考虑到说，我们教会有一个很特别的地方，就是好像一个大家庭这样，所以我们就想一个模式，就是这个教会能够成为家庭化。那么我们也想到说，我们怎样使到家庭也教会化，因为一个家庭的这个形式是在时间的进程的里面，不会被淘汰。 所以我们就是这个模式，怎么样使到我们能够继续的发挥，而又不会失去我们原有的那个特色。
At Jalan Ulu Seletar is a mosque that was built in the 1950s to cater to the Malay community in Nisun. Named after Assemblyman for Sembawang Ahmad Ibrahim, the facade of the mosque still remains the same, but the interior has been refurbished in keeping with the times. This photo, which was taken in 1958, showed a young Haji Manaf. In his 70s today, Haji Manaf has always remained in this mosque. In an earlier interview, he recalled the days of the foreign forces after the setting up of camps nearby.
British Army yang selalu lalu lalang di sini, dan ada yang singgah di sini sebelah malam lebih kurang dalam pukul 2, mereka masuk dalam gitu punya tempat. Di sana nanti dia buat air, ambil susu, dan kemudian dia buka tu dia balik, mungkin tak tahulah kerana mabuk ataupun apa, nanti dia tulis. So di sana dia kata minta maaf, kita telah minum awak punya air dan susu. Begitulah.
Because of the foreign forces, namely the British, Australians and New Zealanders, shops sprang up along Transit Road to cater to their needs.
Transit Road got its name because this used to be a transit camp. Soldiers used to come back from jungle, come in here maybe about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. at night, transit overnight, shower, some shopping, meals, and then they will go back into war, into jungle the next morning or whenever it's time to go out.
Today, Andrew enjoys a thriving business selling electronic goods. He learned salesmanship from serving army personnel during the days of helping out his father at his shop. At that time, Transit Road was a fire-prone area. Many shops destroyed were not rebuilt.
During that time, this land was vacant for quite some time. And I think the owner of this particular land, the old man, he was alive at that time, and he had a lot of feelings for people of this village. A lot of feelings. I think he applied to build these 9 shops for fire victims. Those who were, who lost the shop during the fire. But if it's not for the old man, I don't think you'll be here.
Today, this row of one-story high buildings is an anomaly in Singapore. Just next to Nisun Camp, Andrew has witnessed the profile of his clientele change from predominantly Caucasians to locals after the foreign forces withdrew completely in 1989. For Andrew, staying put at Transit Road is a combination of sentimental and commercial reasons.
Me and my dad, we were close when we were working together. And he handed over the shop to me in his dying bed, and he says, take care of the business. And I like this area because it's peaceful. People do come back from those days and start looking me up, and then we talk about good old times and all kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I built up a good reputation here. I've got strong links with a lot of my regular and repeat customers. They all like to come to me to buy, and have very little overheads. I know people who pay about 10 times more than me in rental and expenses, but don't do as much as what I'm doing here. So as long as business is brisk, I have no reason to move.
The same reasons can be said of the owner of this tattoo shop, who's taken over the reins of business set up by his father some 40 years ago. Inside, with its 1970s feel and look, time appears to have turned back the clock for this old-timer of Transit Road. Just as the foreign forces were once stationed at Transit Road, further up north at Sembawang was an important naval base for the British. Much of the overseas military are gone, but some signs of their existence are still around. When the British forces set up the naval base here at Sembawang, they also built residential houses for their military personnel. This was one of them, called the Black and White House. It was one of many built in the 1930s. And while the British forces have moved out, they still remain as a reminder of the Sembawang legacy. Today, the colonial houses along King's Avenue are occupied mainly by expatriates, such as Margie Hall, who became interested in the area's history and started researching into its past. People who used to live in the houses during the naval base days, or their descendants, would sometimes revisit the area and provide Margie with information. Over time, Margie has accumulated much. For her, the present is always linked to the past.
People have lived here and lived that way, and what happens today is an ongoing sequence up to here. And we've got to acknowledge that we're part of a flow that comes up to here, and you can't just ignore the past. And I think we're minimized as people if we forget the past. I mean, it connects us, and it's, I suppose I don't say, it's interesting, right? It adds to looking at a building or being around here if you know how many people have been here and when they were here and how these places were built and the sort of things that went on.
There are two broad categories of these permanent houses. The brick houses were in earlier style, like this one, which was built in 1929. Meant for 3 single male offices, it also has a servant's quarters. The parallel doors allow air to go all the way through, so cooling the house considerably. On the other hand, the black and white houses were constructed in the 1930s. Built on stilts, the rooms are inside, the corridors on the second floor. Windows line up the rooms for cross-air ventilation. For privacy, there are half doors, or what is known locally as pintu pagas, so that air still breezes through the rooms.
These are old air raid shelters. They were built in 1939 when the naval base was getting ready for war, and you had air raid shelters dotted all around the naval base, close to each of the houses, but maybe people from several houses would all rush to the same one. And as soon as the air raid warning was sounded, then people would rush down here underneath where you're protected, and then you'd stay in there until the all clear signal was given. Then you come out again nice and safe.
Many of the air raid shelters in the area have been sealed off. While this one remains open, its use is a thing of the past. Noraini is a former resident of Sembawang who has set up a personal website of the area. Because of their common interest in the area, Noraini met up with Margie to exchange information and photographs of the old Sembawang.
I try to get all these old pictures and post them on the website. At least you show them, they know all this place has a lot of character, history, that kind of thing. It's just to have that before it's totally lost. Because in Sembawang and elsewhere in Singapore, things are fast changing, you see. What you see now may not be there for another 10 years, then the older part of Sembawang may not be there even, It's a sad thing, but it's the reality in Singapore.
Fond memories of a childhood prompted Noraini to embark on a personal quest to preserve what's left of old Sembawang.
I try to come here every few months and just take pictures of them, Even though I've taken them before, but I like to take it again, and note down the date, and then just walk around, just enjoy whatever is still around. I want to do this, and I feel that I'm at home and come here in my old hometown in Sembawang.
While former residents of Sembawang may reminisce about the idyllic past, Nuraini has an especially strong affection for the place. Others may not understand it, but if an area can evoke such emotions in an individual, surely it still has its quirky and peculiar features. Not too far from Sembawang Park and yet secluded in its isolation is the Masjid Pertempatan Melayu Sembawang. Previously, the surrounding areas were kampongs, but after the government acquired the area, many moved to nearby housing estates in Yishun or Woodlands in the 1980s. With a bigger mosque currently under construction, this mosque is slated to be demolished in 2004. For the old-timers here, a sense of loss is inevitable. Off Gambas Avenue is a gift bestowed upon Sembawang, a gift that existed long before it became too popular that the government had to renovate it as a safety measure. It's the hotly publicized Sembawang Hot Spring. Today it's a pale comparison to its heydays some 2 years ago. After the area was cemented and fenced up, it's lost flavor with Singaporeans who used to flock here for novelty's sake. While some may complain that the hot spring has lost its ambience, perhaps the reverse is true. It has returned to its original roots of cleansing the faithful regulars in this rustic community called Sembawang. Despite the changes at Nisun and Sembawang, we've just seen pockets of places that have withstood the test of time. Next week we visit Old Katong and experience the once quaint town turn bustling food paradise.